Can you imagine our life without these? Most of us use cards, apps, and smartphones for payments every day. As a result, the global digital payment market has reached $8.7 trillion, while paper money is getting less popular. Could you imagine that 41% of Americans don't use cash for any of their typical purchases? And this number doubled in the last 7 years.
Cash is no longer king.
Yet, it isn't true for real estate investments. Last year, 36% of all sales in the US were made in cash, which is the highest share since 2014. How is that possible? And will we actually see the end of cash anytime soon? These are digital wallets or e-wallets. Basically, they're applications for making payments from a computer or phone. What they do is store your payment information and passwords on any device connected to the internet. They are not banks or anything of that kind. They are a middleman between you, a bank, and a receiver. Even though e-wallets are just one of the many components of the digital payment industry, this market is valued at $2 million and is projected to reach $7.5 trillion in 2027. Today, only the top 5 e-wallet apps have almost 1 billion users. We experienced a major shift from cash to e-payments in the last decades. We might not really think about it much, yet by now, 2/3 of adults around the world use digital payments to send or receive money, while over half of Americans say that they don't even carry a wallet around. They just need their phones. Now, it sounds normal, but 20 years ago, this was unimaginable. Everything digital is taking our world by storm, and it seems like the situation to cashless future is much faster than any of us expected. But how did it all start? The story of modern digital payments goes back almost 150 years back to when Edward Bellamy first imagined the concept of a charge card. It wasn't yet the credit card we know today, because the charge card is quite different. When used, you have to pay off your balance in full every month, and there is no option to actually take credit. Even though the first prototype of a payment card appeared in the late 19th century, it wasn't until 1921 that Western Union implemented this idea. They distributed their cards to customers, and this encouraged department stores, service stations, and hotels to do the same. So customers could pay for things without going back home for extra cash. In the 1950s, the Diners Club card and Bank Americard came onto the scene, changing the landscape of credit cards forever. That was the beginning of what we know today as Visa. There's more to the story, so if you want to learn about the dark race of credit cards, feel free to check this video after watching today's episode. But of course, the digital payment history didn't stop there. The 1990s brought online banking. It was the first time in history that a person could access their banking account via the internet without going anywhere. It seemed like an incredible breakthrough, and this was less than 30 years ago. Imagine how fast digital payments developed over the last decades. Shortly after the first online banking, PayPal came into the picture and quickly became the go-to provider for digital payments. Did you know that the technology that allows us to pay with a phone or other devices was already discussed in the early 2000s? But banks and mobile operators had some disagreements on the matter. They could not decide who should manage user information and payment software. This prevented the technology from taking off for years. Finally, in 2014, Apple Pay came out. Android and Samsung Pay followed shortly after. This is history, and everything else is already our reality. And the reality of digital banking is pretty incredible. The total transaction value of non-cash payments worldwide is projected to reach $9.5 trillion in 2023, and the share of card payments increased at a crazy 10% rate yearly. Often, this growth is associated with generational tendency. Younger people tend to use technology much more actively. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, Gen Z consumers are opening new credit card accounts at a faster rate than older cardholders. Still, on average, they have fewer credit cards than baby boomers. While young people can navigate technology easily, one of the major concerns is those who don't feel confident with technology. Many, especially older generations, lack the knowledge of using online payments. Fearing complexity, they stick with traditional payment methods, such as cash.
60% of senior citizens are connected online today, but many continue to feel that they are just too old to learn.
And while 77% of Americans over 18 have at least one credit card, there is another side to the story. According to 2021 data, around 5 million people in the US don't have a bank account at all. So giving up the cash will be nearly catastrophic for them. Besides, people with lower incomes still rely more on paper money than those who are better off. Almost a third of those earning less than $30,000 use cash for all or most purchases, while people with an annual income of $100,000 and more report the biggest decrease in cash usage. Regardless of income, 58% of Americans still try to always have some cash on hand just in case.
I'm an older millennial, so my friends who are not millennials tend to carry that cash around.
The age difference is a determining factor in cash usage. Older adults are 25% more likely to hold on to paper money than those under 50. But you know what's weird? Even though many people and government talk about a cashless future, no countries are completely cashless. But many are testing their options, and several nations have already taken big steps in that direction. These are some of the leaders in cashless payments. These countries are actively integrating and testing new solutions and systems that can eventually eliminate paper money. Sweden is on track to become the first cashless country in 2023. Almost all places in the countries have signed "We are cashless" or "No cash accepted." Today, only 2% of all the nation transactions are made using cash. But the US is different.
In some of those countries, the use of cash has declined precipitously. That is not the case here. Americans still like to use cash.
Even if we compare the number of ATMs in the States and Sweden, we'll see a major contrast. There are just 32 operating ATMs in Sweden. As we all know, the US has a completely different situation.
451,000. That's the total number of automated teller machines in the US.
So will the US at some point be ready to give up cash completely? And the most important question, do we even need to make this shift? Although Americans are far from the Swedish scenario, more and more people in the US are also going cashless. Still, 59% of the nation uses cash, at least for some of the purchases. So does this mean that cash is not going out of circulation anytime soon? Definitely yes. But will the US go completely cashless one day? Probably. Still, if it does, it will be a long journey. Still, why will someone advocate for a society with no cash? First of all, going cashless is convenient. And this is one of the most important reasons people adopt this tendency so fast. It's just easier to pay with your phone than carrying cash around. But on top of that, a cashless society can lead to lower crime rates and decrease money laundering. Plus, during the pandemic, we've discovered that going cashless also has health benefits because of all the germs that cash carries. But it isn't a perfect solution either. Going cashless has many downsides as well. The main drawback is security.
A significant cyber attack taking place across the nation and around the world.
Several U.S. federal government agencies have been hit in a major cyber attack.
A significant cyber attack has taken place across the country and around the world.
There are countless cases where banks, governmental institutions, and corporations got hacked. The problem with all these cyber attacks is usually the sensitive data leaks from their databases. And if you are in that database, your personal and financial information can be exposed. For example, in 2017, Equifax experienced a cyber attack and lost the data of nearly 150 million people. As a result, the company had to pay almost $600 million in fines. In another 2014 cyber attack, Home Depot lost over 50 million credit card numbers and 53 email addresses. In the end, the corporation paid at least $135 million to credit card companies and banks. Seems like cyber attacks happen more often than we hear about them. And of course, everyone from businesses to government and financial institutions take several measures to protect their systems. For example, the Biden administration is asking for $26.2 billion from Congress in cyber funding for 2024. And the main challenge of going cashless is having no alternative if some financial systems go down. Now, if you can't access your bank account because of some technical issue on their web, you can still use cash. But what if there's no alternative? Some of the downsides of digital payment include transaction limitations, fees, extra costs for both businesses and individuals, and potential identity fraud. But despite all the potential dangers and drawbacks, digital payments are still on the rise. More and more industries leverage their benefits, including real estate. It might not seem that obvious at first, but electronic payments and other digital systems greatly change the process of buying properties for good. For example, the lender's research got much faster. Before, if you wanted to go and buy a home, you had to go to or call banks and mortgage brokers to find the best rates and conditions, whereas now you can check most of the information online. Besides, before, people had to meet with lenders in person and complete tons of manual paperwork even to get considered for a mortgage. It was a long and tedious process that required patience and dedication. But now, the pre-approval stage can be done without any face-to-face interaction. You can simply go online and submit your financial documents, such as income statement, tax documents, credit history, etc. And the lenders would assess your credit worthiness without even meeting you to decide how much you can borrow. Still, of course, it will take time for you to prepare all the documents beforehand to provide the correct information. Otherwise, you can face delays or your application might not get accepted at all. Once pre-approved, you can start the property selection. Needless to say, this process is much easier than it was decades ago. You can use several websites to check property information, compare prices, and use filters to find anything you need faster. Besides, there are countless features people couldn't even imagine before, such as virtual tours. They got popular a couple of years ago, but the pandemic made them essential. According to Realtor.com, 54% of homebuyers won't even look at a property without a video home tour. Probably that is why the real estate market saw an incredible 500% jump in requests for virtual tours. The digital economy also made monthly mortgage payments much less of a hassle. Today, you can transfer money online in a matter of seconds or even automate your payments to save more time. But before, borrowers had to manually pay their mortgages every month by writing a check or going to the bank. As you can see, electronic payments and modern technology make buying a home faster. But on the other hand, cash also is in debt for real estate, at least in the US. In 2022, the American housing market slowed down, but cash transactions still went up. The reason behind that lay in higher interest rates, which made cash purchases more attractive for those who could afford it. There was a total of $62,000 cash home sales. That meant that every 10 houses were bought with cash, representing the highest number since 1989. Even though Americans still use cash a lot, the digital trend is here to stay, and many believe that the next shift might be influenced by cryptocurrencies. To date, the use of cryptocurrency is a very controversial subject, especially when it comes to making large transactions. This is because the state can't clearly track and regulate its flow. Because of this, it is currently quite difficult to buy something significant, such as a house using crypto, at least in the US. However, a competitive alternative for cryptocurrency might appear very soon, and it might be the digital dollar. Even though, in theory, it will be similar to crypto, it will be backed and issued by the Fed, the same way as the regular dollar we have now. The US Federal Reserve is exploring the potential of a digital dollar, the electronic money that's regulated by the central bank. This could provide another payment option alongside with physical cash and bank accounts. But for now, those are still talks.
Legitimate digital public money could help drive out bogus digital private money.
The main issue is that digital dollars will come with the same security risk, such as theft and fraud. So it is important to ensure that it delivers more benefit than cost while protecting users' privacy.
The fundamental question for us is, if we add this, will that help the public?
Digital payments aren't going anywhere. And soon, we might be buying real estate with digital dollars, or who knows, maybe even Bitcoin. But for now, cash will still be in use. At least in the US, a completely cashless economy seems rather impossible. For me, personally, the main question remains, do we really need a cashless society? Do you think we should get rid of cash completely? Let me know down in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.